So let's hop right in, right? So a little bit of background to start. There's basically two governing bodies that you need to know when you talk about credit reports. So the first one is the FCRA. And if you've been here before, you've heard us talk about the FCRA a million times. That's the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So that governs how CRAs are supposed to be policed. What's a CRA, right? A CRA is a consumer reporting agency. That's what we do. It's commercial investigations. So we have to go by the FCRA guidelines. The other major one you need to know about is the EEOC, so the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They administer and enforce civil rights laws in the workplace. They do not enforce the FCRA, however. The U.S. Trade Commission enforces the FCRA. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission enforces equal employment opportunity laws. So they oversee how employers can use the information on credit checks, and they prohibit employers from illegally discriminating against those people. So for example, an employer can't apply the same information to two different groups that they get from a credit report. They want to really level that playing field for everybody, right? So why do employers use pre-employment credit checks? Well, for one reason, credit checks give a detailed borrowing of and paying of money, right? So they include current past assets, liabilities, car ownership, house ownership, length of residence at the address, bank accounts, all that stuff. All of those can be signals that your applicant could be at a sign of a risk or fraud for their financial responsibility. We really only use credit checks for applicants in positions that will handle money. You really don't need it otherwise than that. And the big three credit reporting agencies are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Here at Commercial Investigations, we use TransUnion pretty much exclusively. There's pros and cons to that I think we'll touch on a little bit later. So what exactly is a credit check looking for, right? To start, an employer cannot see your credit score. So that's one of our biggest questions that we get from applicants that call in. Employers are not able to see your credit score. They are able to see some personal information, like your social security number, and they're able to see your address and a little bit of address history as well. But they are not able to see your date of birth, for example, on your credit report. That's to avoid discrimination with the EEOC again. The report will show you payment record, the amount you owe, available credit. It also shows debts, mortgage, car, and all that stuff that we just touched on. And the reports pulled from background investigations specifically are considered soft. So they don't actually affect your credit score when we search it. For example, like if you were to go buy a new car and they asked you to run a credit report, that would be considered a hard inquiry and that would affect your credit score. But for background investigations, it does not at all. So under the FCRA, there are a couple of things that employers must do and actually must not do when considering a credit check for a potential applicant. So you do have to get written approval from the applicant, right? So you do need a consent form. You do need to notify the applicant and get that written back to you before you start. Generally, the credit reports don't go back farther than 7 to 10 years. That's just kind of a basic best practices. They are able to do that, but usually we don't go back more than 7 to 10 years. There are laws regarding bankruptcy information as well. So applicants are not allowed to be discriminated against solely because they filed for bankruptcy. But on an employer side, bankruptcies are fairly easy to obtain their public information, so anybody can find that stuff anyway. From the applicant side, the applicant must be told if the report is going to be used against them. So if you if you find adverse information in that report for any reason, you do have to let your applicant know that. The applicant does have the right to see the full report. They do have the right to receive it for free. And then they can dispute all that information in there as well, however they please. And in that report, they give contact information for, say, TransUnion or us, if we were to run it. New York State, otherwise, really doesn't do too much different than federal laws. New York State uses the FCRA to govern the credit checks. But again, we really want to focus on only jobs that are going to be handling money to use credit checks for. Other than that, you really don't need them. And then the New York State Department of Labor does have their own Equal Employment Opportunity Division, but they stay kind of congruent with the EEOC and kind of follow their same guidelines. So here at Commercial Investigations, we actually use 4 different types of personal identifying information when we look for these credit checks. And I think we had a question about it. Tyler's going to go over it in just a little bit. But we recommend that you don't utilize this inquiry unless it's for tenant screening or it's related to job functions and compliance with, with if your applicant is going to be handling any money or anything like that. Not all CRAs offer credit checks. They are decently expensive to offer. So that's another perk that we have. We do offer those credit checks for any employers that might need them. So thank you for listening to me. I am going to cut off my recording right now real quick.